I'll send it to you later. But anyway, I don't have nothing. So without further ado, let's get this party started. All right, so rules of rulers. We are on now to democracy. You're going to see some similarities between dictatorship and democracy, but just slight changes here and there. So the first video is how they get voters on their side.
So let us discuss rulers as representatives. You again might have grand dreams of the utopia you wish to build, but no man rules alone, and never more so than in democracy. Presidents and prime ministers must negotiate with their senates and parliaments and vice versa, and they all have their own key supporters to manage. In a well-designed democracy, power is fractured among many and is taken not with force, but with words, meaning you must get thousands or millions of citizens to, if not like you on election day, at least like you better than the alternative. With so many voters and such fractured power, it's impossible to, as a dictator would, follow these rules and buy loyalty. Or is it? Of course not. Don't think of citizens as individuals with their individual desires, but instead as divided into blocks. The elderly or homeowners or business owners or the poor. Blocks you can reward as a group. Democracies have wildly complicated tax codes and laws, not as accident, but as reward for the blocks that get and keep the ruling representatives in power. Farming subsidies, for example, have nothing to do with the food a nation needs, but entirely with how key the vote of the farming bloc is. Countries where farmers' votes don't swing elections don't have farming subsidies. If a bloc doesn't vote, such as younger citizens, then no need to divert rewards their way. Even if large in number, they are irrelevant to gaining power. Which is good news for you. One less block to sway, and the treasure you give your key blocks has to come from somewhere. If you want long years in office, Rule 3 is your friend in a democracy just as much as a dictatorship. You can't eliminate those who don't vote for you, but there is still much you can do. Once in power, make it easier for your key blocks to vote and harder for others. Establish voting systems that reduce the number of blocks you need to win, the more rivals you get. Very handy indeed. Draw election borders to predetermine the results for you or your cronies, and have party pre-elections with Byzantine rules to determine who blocks even can vote for. Mix and match the above for even better power perpetuation. When approval ratings couldn't be lower, yet re-election rates couldn't be higher, you'll know you've succeeded.
That's just nice way. Voter blocks. That was just a real nice way of saying gerrymandering. That was really nice way of saying it, but that's what he was saying at the end. Putting key blocks in already predetermined signed areas to already decide on how the vote is going to go. That was just I'm sorry, I just can't get that out of my head. That was the sweetest way I've ever heard gerrymandering in my life. But anyway, I'm gonna stop talking.
No, he was sitting on gerrymandering, but really it's bigger than that, which is why he did it the way he did it with the 4 squares. Because the gerrymandering is the part where you do the breaking and the packing, right? Where, okay, if I do it this way, everybody gets an equal shot. If I do it this way, then I get a little bit more. If I do it this way, I get a whole lot more. How do we rearrange the voting districts so that it swings one way or the other based on who's in power, right? That's the gerrymandering piece of it. But then the other part of it is, if you notice some of the illustrations he was using, This is where you look at, okay, how do I make, I'm going to use more current terms for us here in America. Where do I place my voting drop boxes? How easy do I make it to vote by mail? How do I make absentee ballots factor into the system so that they're not basically the same as if you showed up on voting day? How do I set up early voting so that my particular group is more likely to come out and vote over time because they, speaking as like the Democratic Party, they know that they draw their power from the larger masses, right? They don't listen to them, but they draw their power from the larger masses. Well, that means the larger masses are disproportionately on the lower end of the income scale. So they're more vulnerable to their work schedules and things like that. So early voting is very important for that group. So the Democrats want to make sure you have early voting or longer hours at the polls or more drop boxes versus less, right? And then the Republicans on the other side, more of their people are very homogenous. They're more rural in many cases, so things can be more static where their bases are. So they're not as concerned about extended windows of time. Their people will go vote on voting day, right? So that's one of it's a weird thing to kind of point out, but like a lot of times people cry racism or discrimination, and really what it is power politics, you know, and it manifests with some racial or discriminatory outcomes, but it's really power politics. They're playing to win, right? Based on who their bases are. And that's really kind of what I was picking up from what he was saying in the video.